You think you can spot a toxic person from a mile away, right? The obvious narcissist, the blatant manipulator, the aggressive bully. But here's what Carl Jung discovered that'll shake you to your core. The most dangerous people in your life aren't the obvious villains. They're the charming ones, the helpful ones, sometimes even your own family members. These people don't hurt you intentionally. They destroy you unconsciously, and that makes them infinitely more dangerous. Jung spent his entire career studying what he called the shadow, the dark, hidden parts of human psychology that most people refuse to acknowledge. What he found was terrifying. When someone can't face their own darkness, that shadow needs somewhere to go. And guess what? It goes straight into you. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button because we're about to dive deep into territory most people never want to explore. Right now, as you're watching this, you might be living with one of these 6 psychological vampires Jung identified. You might even be one yourself. And until you recognize these patterns, you'll keep getting emotionally destroyed by people who have no idea they're doing it. Let's start with the most common one, the unconscious manipulator. Picture this. You're constantly walking on eggshells around someone. They never directly ask for anything, but somehow you always end up feeling guilty, responsible for their emotions, like you've done something wrong even when you haven't. Sound familiar? This person lives in what Jung called chronic projection. They take every unresolved trauma, every repressed emotion, every part of themselves they can't face, and they throw it onto you like you're their personal emotional dumping ground. You never agreed to. The scary part. These people are often incredibly charming. They have this wounded, sensitive energy that makes you want to save them. But here's Jung's brutal truth. You can't save someone who refuses to look at themselves. You'll just drown trying. Next up is the persona addict, the person who's so obsessed with their image, they've forgotten who they actually are. We all wear masks. Jung called this the persona, the face we show the world. But some people become so addicted to the applause, so terrified of being seen as flawed, that the mask becomes permanently fused to their face. Living with a persona addict is like being in a relationship with a hologram. Everything feels rehearsed, artificial, performed. They can't handle your authenticity because it reminds them of everything they've buried. So they pressure you to perform too, to fit into their perfect little stage play. The most insidious part. You start policing yourself. You begin hiding the messy, real parts of who you are because they make the persona addict uncomfortable. Before you know it, you're wearing a mask too, and you've forgotten it's even there. But here's where it gets really dark. When someone spends years repressing their authentic self, all that denied energy doesn't just disappear. It ferments. It builds pressure, until one day it explodes. Enter the shadow owner, the person who's been good for so long their darkness has turned radioactive. You know this person. They're always controlled, always proper, always doing the right thing. They never lose their temper, never show weakness, never admit to having a dark thought. They're the ones who judge others for being too emotional or out of control. But Jung understood something most people miss. The stronger the light someone projects, the darker their shadow becomes. All that repressed anger, jealousy, sexuality, ambition, it doesn't disappear. It becomes a monster in the basement of their psyche. And when that monster finally breaks free, it's devastating. These are the people who have explosive outbursts over tiny things, who hold grudges for decades, who passive-aggressively sabotage everything around them. They're walking emotional time bombs. Living with a shadow owner means living in a minefield. You never know what innocent comment will trigger the explosion, because you're not just dealing with them, you're dealing with years of denied emotions all at once. Now let's talk about the moral controller, possibly the most dangerous type because they genuinely believe they're helping you. These people weaponize virtue. They use morality, spirituality, ethics, all good things as tools of control. They position themselves as the guardian of what's right and wrong. But here's what Jung saw clearly. Excessive moralism is just another form of shadow projection. The moral controller can't face their own dark impulses, so they become obsessed with yours. They make you feel guilty for being human, for having desires, making mistakes, being imperfect. Their criticism comes wrapped in phrases like, "I'm just trying to help you grow," or "someone needs to tell you the truth." But this isn't truth, it's projection. They're attacking in you what they can't accept in themselves. And because they believe they're doing God's work, they're absolutely ruthless about it. The fifth type is the complex-driven person, someone who's been hijacked by their own trauma. Jung discovered that unhealed traumas create what he called complexes, like separate personalities living inside us that can take control at any moment. One minute this person is sweet and loving, the next they're exploding with rage over something that seems completely unrelated. Here's what's happening. Your innocent comment just triggered a trauma from 20 years ago, and suddenly you're not dealing with the person in front of you. You're dealing with their wounded inner child, their abandoned teenager, their betrayed young adult, all at once. The exhausting part is the inconsistency. They're wonderful one day, a nightmare the next. You start thinking you can save them if you just try harder, walk more carefully, love them more perfectly. But you can't heal someone else's complex. They have to do that work themselves. Finally, we have the psychic vampire, the person who feeds on your energy like it's their life source. This isn't about dramatic scenes or obvious manipulation. It's subtler and more devastating. They need constant reassurance, endless emotional support, your complete availability. They turn every conversation into a therapy session where you're the unpaid therapist. You start giving them your time, your energy, your peace of mind. You feel guilty for wanting space, selfish for needing silence. They've convinced you that their emotional survival depends on you, and you've bought into the lie that you're responsible for another person's psychological well-being. Jung called this pathological symbiosis, when two people become so enmeshed that healthy boundaries completely dissolve. You stop knowing where you end and they begin. Here's the truth Jung would want you to understand. Recognizing these patterns isn't about judging others. It's about protecting your own psychological sovereignty. Because here's the thing, we all have the capacity to be any of these types when we're unconscious. The question isn't whether you've encountered these people, you have. The question is, which of these patterns do you recognize in yourself? Because the moment you start making the unconscious conscious, the moment you stop projecting your own unhealed wounds onto others, that's when you begin to reclaim your power. That's when you stop being a victim of other people's psychological chaos and start being the author of your own psychological freedom. The most dangerous person in your life might be looking back at you in the mirror. But that's also where your greatest power lies. When you heal your own shadow, when you integrate your own complexes, when you take off your own masks, you become immune to everyone else's unconscious projections. Which of these types have you encountered? More importantly, which one are you? Drop a comment and let's start making the unconscious conscious together. Because once you see these patterns, you can never unsee them. And that's exactly the kind of psychological freedom Jung believed we all deserve.